Yellow shoes after I left the basketball game. I found another dude in a set of yellow shoes hanging out in front of a 7-Eleven. He was sucking the last of a cherry flavored slush. His cheeks collapsed as he inhaled that sweet, meaningless drink. His eyes were roving in their sockets as he scrutinized the oil stained parking lot. Let him blame society, school, and his deadbeat father. He could care less. He was trouble. His face was half light, half dark under the glare of a sputtering neon sign. It was the dark side of his face that attracted me. Who are you? I asked, face to face, as if we were two boxers right before the start of a fight. How come you got those same stupid shoes on? It was trippy encountering another vato in yellow shoes. I wondered if that was the new style for gangbangers. But unlike the skinny guy who did me, this dude in front of the store was as heavy as a sack of onions, fat and out of breath, just sucking in his drink. He tossed his cup, he looked left, looked right, hiked up his loose Wango Dickies cut off at the cuts. He approached a Honda with different colored fenders and a spider web of a cracked windshield. The fat dude disappeared into the shadows. He approached a Honda with different colored fenders and a spider web of a cracked windshield. The fat dude disappeared into the shadows and his hand wiggled in the passenger's window, which was open an inch. The inch was enough for him to work his wormy fingers inside. He wiggled back and forth until it too cracked and cobwebbed. "I," he yapped. A finger nipped by a sliver of glass went into his mouth like a candy cane. He shook his finger and muttered, "Stupid glass." This ride didn't have an alarm and barely any tread on the tires, and they were as shiny as a bald man's head. The fenders could fall off hitting a pothole. This was the kind of car that you got into from one place to another in truly ugly style. It was a car even Hmong and Mexican gangs wouldn't consider stealing. Nasty junior high kids wouldn't bother to bend the antenna. The junk man would laugh, run a handkerchief under his nose, and laugh some more. As for organizations that search for donated cars, one look, they'd drive away. The Honda was on its way to becoming scrap metal. Maybe this dude was practicing the art of thievery. Maybe he couldn't help himself. He opened the door and jumped in quickly, the springs squeaking under his weight. He rifled through the glove compartment and found a can of hairspray, two Bibles, not a moss. He growled and fanned the pages of a Bible as if he were trying to cool himself. When he tossed it over his shoulder, he heard a whimper that startled him. He turned around and discovered a poodle. "Stupid dog," he snarled. "You scared me, stupid." Stupid, it seemed, was the main word in this vato's vocabulary. The poodle whimpered. The little furry dude with all black muck running from its eyes was the one who was scared. When the dude reached down to grab the dog by the throat, I shoved the stumps of my ghostly arms to his eyes. He backed off, rubbing his peepholes, and farted the winds of fear. He farted a second time, and I laughed. "Fuki!" His hands reached for the door handle. My power is the coldness of death. I'm invisible, yet present, and this bully was comprehending my power. I had no power, and my feet was gone, but I could make people feel my presence. This is what I was learning about myself. The guy scrambled out of the car and hurried away at once, one hand pulling up his pants as he let out another fart. I would have followed him for the fun of it, but I'd had enough of this ugly face. Plus, I couldn't hold my place. The wind had picked up and I was sent rolling like a tumbleweed. Luckily for me, it was in the direction of my prime Eddie's duplex apartment, a mile or so away. Luckily for me, it was in the direction of my prime Eddie's duplex apartment, a mile or so away in the part of town where Fausto, the bike thief, held court in his half-painted house. I rolled past the high school where one of the teams was making a basket. Let it be us, I prayed. Just this night, let us be winners. The wind push eased and I was able to stand upright on a dark street. Kids had busted out the streetlights for the fun and the danger of it. I got my bearings and ignored the car alarm that was screaming, but no one stepped out of their houses to see. What was a car alarm when better action was taking place on TV? I recognized my Primo's apartment and prayed that he had left my parents' place and was home by now. What he and my mom had been talking about, what had he and my mom been talking about anyway? Lights were on. A radio was singing to itself. Because I went through the wall, there was no one home. I went through the wall because no one was home. Still, I called out, Primo, Eddie. A moth banged against the bulb of the goose-necked lamp. The refrigerator kicked on, chilling the cold water even colder. I stood in the living room and it was not in the least scared when a tree in the yard whistled its haunting tune. I got comfy on the couch, my weight not even denting the cushion an inch. I noticed that both my ankles were gone and some of my wrist. I felt a shiver blossom in my shoulders and wanted to cry. Instead, I lay on the couch and assembled in my mind something to smile about, something to remember from my crazy life. I giggled. I pictured Eddie and me crouching like flop frogs and playing with matches. Bad boys for a day. We were in an old lady's junky backyard, and Eddie, the brave one, because he was 7 and I was 6, struck a couple of wooden matches at once. He cried, "Aye!" and tossed them over his head when the flames licked his fingertips. One match flared and caught the dry grass that was not lawn but something yellow as hay. We jumped up like frogs. I remember asking him, "Are we going to burn?" When Eddie bugged out his eyes, I knew we were in trouble. He was as scared as me. We jumped and danced on the flames, but they spurted out under our little tennis shoes. The fire's great hunger began to feast on the quickly blackening grass. I had to smile to myself as I remember the two of us trying to climb a chain link fence. Trying is the word. I got my pants cuffs caught on the top of the fence and flipped back to hang upside down, mouth open. It was weird. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the flames grazing on the grass and the smoke beginning to rise in puffs that signaled trouble. But I didn't become too scared until I heard the distant wail of fire engines. I pictured the firemen with hoses and ladders. I pictured the smoke curling out around my body on the fence, like a chicken on a barbecue grill. Eddie tried to unhook me, but he wasn't strong enough up to lift me up and free my pants cuff. He said that I was going to be okay and gently let me fall back and rest against the chain link. He ran away, promising to get help. I was really scared then. I envisioned my mom burning my legs with a good belt whipping. Now there was fire. Annie, you funny dude, I said when I laughed. We were troublemaking Moscosos that day. It took a fireman to unhook me from the fence. I couldn't tell if he was smiling or frowning because I was hanging upside down, but he was smart enough, but was smart enough to hurry away once my dizziness disappeared. What was that, 12 years ago? Eddie was now studying air conditioning at City College, and I was dead and losing myself to the eventual dark hallway of a wet grave. I was looking at the wall where a slightly curled Raiders calendar was nailed when a key rattled in the door. The doorknob turned, and Eddie entered cautiously as he scanned the living room in this part of town. There was every chance of encountering a thug waiting in the shadows. His eyes were red, his face was as gray as ash. It took a lot of effort to get the key out of the door. He checked his kitchen before hurrying to the bathroom to take a leak that lasted longer than I could hold my breath, if I had had breath. He didn't flush but came out zipping up. He was starting again for the kitchen when he heard a tap on the front door. Eddie froze. His eyes spun crazily in their sockets, and I sensed he was thinking about what to pick up. The coat hanger on the kitchen table? The hammer on the chair? He was searching for a weapon to use to defend himself. Who was knocking on that door and at this late hour? Not some religious group asking if they wanted to be saved. The tap came, this time softer. Eddie stepped towards the door and hesitated, his breathing shallow. He took a step backward and picked up the hammer off the chair. What was he going to do? Nail the intruder to the wall? I floated over to Eddie and stood so close I could see the pulse in his throat. He swallowed his fear and reached for the doorknob, and he pulled open the door slowly. No one was there. Light footsteps, a woman in pumps, clicked down the driveway of the duplex. When they faded, Eddie, hammer raised, stepped outside and discovered on the mat a folded dish towel that I recognized from home. What was it doing there? When he picked it up and opened it, he found a gun, heavy as the hammer in his hand. Jesus, he muttered. He walked down the porch and hurried into the driveway. Tia, I can't do it. Tia, my mother. My mom had delivered a handgun and a towel to her nephew? It was so clear, like the moon tangled in the nearly leafless sycamore trees. My mom expected revenge, and she chose Eddie to see to this revenge. I thought she would have known better. After all, she was a grown-up. After all, she went to church every Sunday. And didn't the Bible say something about not taking another person's life? Mom, I said, you can't do this. I flapped my arms at my side, as if a fallen angel could take off and leave the place. So that's what they were talking about in the kitchen. Her old Buick headlights lit up in the black asphalt lining the street. She pulled away from the curb, and I tried to run after her with my long strides. I might have kept up with her car. She was a slow driver who went by the rules and used both her hands on the steering wheels, except the wind pushed me in the other direction. No, I screamed at my mom. You can't ask him to do this. I slowed to a walk and turned around, head down. I loved my cousin, who many years ago tried to unhook me when I was hanging upside down. I would crave his friendship until my body disappeared altogether. Friendship is what I longed for, but nature was telling me to move on. When I looked up, my cousin was setting the hammer on top of the handgun, the tools of a terrible trade.